Welcome all. Look, it's my pleasure to be able to contribute just in a small way to a great initiative from Veld Performance to put this series together, and I'm looking forward to some Q&A and idea sharing at the back end of this process also. I'll give a few of my thoughts today, but obviously there's a lot more outstanding minds out there in the world, and it'd be great to connect and talk over ideas. We're all obviously facing a very similar challenge with COVID-19 and different lockdown periods at the moment. So as athletes and as coaches and other staff in sports, it's a challenge that really not many of us are used to at all, and we're finding our way through it as we go. So it's great when companies can connect us like this and help us share information and help each other through the process. So I know there's a couple of other great operators that are delivering more around the strength programming side of things in that space with a bit more detail, and I'll be focusing a little bit more on the big picture. And three key things that within our environment we focus on making sure that we cover when we put a process together is mindset, skill set and structure. So I'll touch on how we've approached those three areas when it comes to getting our players through this lockdown period and trying to find a way through it and get the most out of it and be the most ready at the back end of this process as well. An early disclaimer. Basically every image that I've utilised in this, apart from the background of the inside your house and your one main wall, has been either stolen or borrowed from a simple Google search to find a right image that I'll be talking about. So I haven't given credit in the slides to where I've taken the images from. So this is just an early confession to say that I don't own any of the images in the slide, but the points that I'll be getting across, I'll just be using those to illustrate my thoughts on this current situation that we're finding ourselves in. So starting off with mindset, really for us is a critical piece of the puzzle. As much as we can do with our bodies, we know that our mind is a real key driver, and how we approach things and how we see things and view things is really critically important. And the reality is we've illustrated to our playing group and our coaching and staff and management group that we are leaving our current normal, and it's not our job to try to replicate our normal environment in a different situation, and that's something that we needed to get our minds around and park very early. Welcome to normal, and it's a new normal, and it's about making the absolute most of whatever this new normal might be and figuring out our way through it. For a lot of the staff, a lot of the coaches, a lot of the players and athletes, it's the first time going through something of this nature. So it's about how we approach that and how we come out the other side having grown and gotten better in a number of different areas. So a couple of things we talked about early is loss, and in the physical performance side of things, the first thing we consider is detraining in terms of a loss. So what physical qualities and physical capacities are going to be lost by being confined to home or having very limited outside exercise time or space or availability or training partners or whatever the challenges may be. So our minds immediately shift to that space, and we start thinking about who's going to lose weight, who's going to gain weight, who needs what in terms of trying to limit the detraining effect. And something that's really important for us not to brush over is the overall sense of loss that everybody will be having and the impact that has from a psychological perspective, with all stress coming out of the same pot. Something that we need to consider as load as well. The grief of losing all of that work that you put in for the planning up to the current point in the cycle, the rug's pulled out from under you, and there's a sense of loss that all that work was for nothing because the season's gone and all your goals that you set disappear in a cloud of smoke. And the players don't get to do what they love doing either. They don't get to turn up with their mates every day. They don't get to compete. They don't get to chase down a success or a title or a career goal and the things that they've been pushing themselves towards. So we have to understand that that's a real individual journey. It is something that you don't necessarily walk alone, as the image there on the wall says, but you will have your own way to go through it, and different people will react in different ways, and they'll have different ways of coping with it. And so we need to understand that. We need to understand that sometimes a lack of compliance at this time is a difficulty coming to grips with the sense of loss of everything that's been taken away. So we need to have understanding when we're programming for athletes during this time, without taking away the structure completely and actually giving them a support network and something to engage with moving forward, which shifts us to shifting our focus to what can we actually gain from this period once we have that understanding. Now obviously there's a physical component that we can gain. There's an individual goal setting process where a player or an athlete can determine what they want to get out of this time for themselves. There will be at least one thing that they can shift forward physically in this time that's going to be beneficial. So how do we put a process in place that simplifies them and allows them to focus on gaining in that area? Outside the physical side, outside the performance side, there's so many other things to be gained within this as well. Our athletes get a unique snapshot of what it looks like to be a retired athlete or an athlete who's had their career ended by injury. Do they have anything else to fall back on? What else is going on in their life? Also, we lose a whole lot of things that we start to take for granted. So writing down what we're grateful for, actually gaining some perspective and rebalancing that gratitude versus that entitlement of what we get and what we expect and what we get to do that we start to take for granted every day. The reality is it's an incredible opportunity to work outside the sport and develop other life skills that are going to be sustainable for when sport ends. So it really allows us to connect in with, look, are we motivated or are we driven? How do we connect with why we actually do what we do every day? And those that really will be struggling have more of that extrinsic motivation, that outside driver. They get hit really hard by pay cut and staff cut and job loss because that extrinsic side of it isn't there. Not being able to get bonuses, get promotions, not being able to win titles, not getting the perks and the pay that comes with doing our job. And the other extrinsic parts, we can't underestimate the impact of those being taken away. When it comes to intrinsic motivation, it's how can we dial in as performance coaches, as staff members, as athletes and players, and try to dial into some of those internal drivers around how we actually enjoy what we do. What is our why? How do we grow from this? Why are we actually passionate about what we're doing? How do we actually grow ourselves outside what we're currently doing? How do we express ourselves? How do we still connect with our teammates, with our friends, and have fun and enjoyment in an environment that's not normal, where things have been taken away from us? How do we actually connect and engage with a task? And that's what we want to really link into, so that whether they're developing life skills or whether they're training and lifting in their own home gym with whatever equipment they've been able to pull together or that we've given them, or whether they're out running on their own or doing laps around their own backyard, that tapping into the why and the intrinsic motivation of where they're trying to get to and what they're trying to achieve is going to be absolutely critical, because the extrinsic and the external side of things has been taken away. So when we shift through from mindset into skill set, how do we actually start to apply that now we've got that understanding? So it's a great opportunity for players, athletes, to just go back to being kids again and find what they enjoy. Find ways to improve hand-eye coordination with a skill activity that's non-specific. We can't train as a team. We can't get, for us at Crusaders, any rugby specific content in as a group or in pairs or in threes or fours or fives or tens or whatever it may be. But how can we actually develop parts of our individual skill set that are then going to have some form of carryover when the time comes to shift back towards a rugby focused program? We get to focus on an individual, so we can make things fit based on what people have available, what their challenges are and what their goals are. We don't have to consider the performance of the team on the weekend at the moment, so we can really dial in on what an individual needs and put that first. Individual conversations, one-on-one via FaceTime or phone, to set goals and figure out ways to make things fit for people. It takes time, but we have more time to do that right now. It's a great opportunity even for lifting techniques, so if you want to develop a skill set, most players won't have a full gym set up with enough load to lift strong. Some will be very lucky, but a lot won't have much load. They won't have a full setup of equipment. So by using different prescription tools and different coaching tools, and whether it's just a FaceTime coaching call, whether we're prescribing through an online app that has a video coaching function, the fact that our players are lifting lighter means we can dial them back to not think that just lifting heavy is going to make them better. So we can focus on technique during this period, lifting lighter for better range and better movement and better technique to get more performance and strength. Having said that, if there isn't enough load at all, we can employ other methods using eccentrics and isometrics and rest pause sets and other ways of accommodating resistance and increasing the stress on the body. Because the reality is, our body doesn't know whether we're training in a garage or whether we're in a flash gym or not. It just knows the stress that we put it under. The top right hand side, look, if an athlete was to work on one skill set that's going to maximize their performance and their recovery for their entire career, we know that it's cooking and preparation and of their nutrition. The ability to put time and effort into that space where the easy options of ordering food and getting food delivered have been taken away. The only option available to our players at the moment is purchasing food and cooking it and assembling their own meals. So we start to gain an appreciation for the food that we're actually eating as more than just fuel. It becomes an experience, but it also has a whole lot more depth to it, and it means that they have an understanding of what it takes to assemble the food that will keep them in a good space for the rest of their life. So it's an incredible skill set that there's so much time and opportunity to really focus and dial in on at the moment. The reality is that planning and scheduling in most team environments is done by the team management. So how good are our players at actually figuring out how to organise their day? They get told what to wear, when to be, what to eat, what time we're starting, what time we finish, how much to do. It's all prescribed. So we almost take away their ability to do that for themselves by overdoing it within a team space. So this is a great opportunity for players to learn to plan and schedule their working week and their non-working week for themselves in their own time and find a way that suits them. So they can really take ownership of it. And that means that they're doing it for them. So they're not doing it for us. They're not training at 10 o'clock because we said 10 o'clock and we're there watching, and they're doing it because we're watching them. They're training for themselves and their own goals and their own intrinsic why and their own drivers. Which just leads across, I guess, to the fact that as performance coaches, as athletes, when we start working in high performance sport, it's very easy to check any other part of your own personal identity at the door when you first walk through the gates, and to become, this is what I am, this is who I am, this is what I do. Now that that piece has been taken away, the players don't get to play in front of crowds, they don't get to have that identity as a professional rugby player or a professional sportsman on a weekly basis. It really opens up an opportunity to identify any gaps away from that. Who are we? Who are we? And are we scrambling to fill our spare time with distractions so that we don't have to grow? Are we scrambling to fill the spare time that we've got now to try and find ways to keep reinforcing that identity and stay as that identity? Or are we growing something else about ourselves that's going to make us a better athlete and a better person holistically together? We often talk in a performance environment about the importance of mindfulness, whether it's meditation, yoga, breathing practice, taking time to be aware of our thoughts, to focus in, to clear the mind and just be present. The reality is that it's such a busy time usually that it gets done in little snippets. There's a great opportunity to segment and plan time for that to be done on a daily and a weekly basis. So it's a great skill set for our players and our athletes to be able to work on while they're working on their physical capacities. Moving through to structure after talking about self-organisation and ownership, the two key pictures here is how long is a piece of string. We don't know currently at the moment how long this will go for in any different environment or any different country. We don't know what the end point is and what it looks like yet. But a very simple answer, you don't know how long a piece of string is, but you can guarantee that it's twice half its length. So we know that if we break things down into segments, we can figure out at least some sense of structure to it, which is what we're here for as performance coaches, performance staff, coaches, and management, in terms of putting a structure in place for the athletes to be able to follow in their own self-driven time while they're on their own now. We know we can put things in the right order at the right time to get the best possible result. The process that we've really taken here is to step back and take a breath. We know that there's a lot of early stress when things get taken away. We're struggling with that internal battle of the external and internal motivators. There's all sorts of things going on that add overall stress. So if we add too much too soon, then all we're doing is tipping that stress balance over and above where it needs to be. And the reality is that we have time. We're going to have time for this to follow its course and find its end point. And we're going to be in a different landscape when the end point comes, but we're going to be ready for it. We can drip feed certain parts of the process in as we go along and get closer to where that end point might be. But if we add too much too soon, we're going to have a lack of adherence, and we're going to have people burning out with their drive to get to where they want to go. So if we hold it back and we have people itching for more, and we gradually add more pieces and make it more and more specific. So as an example for us, we've taken an off-season model, and the reality is that we've needed to accept the fact that our season is over and will never finish. And when we do get back together for our specific group, it's not going to be the continuation of that season. That season's gone, and the opportunity to achieve our goals were taken away. But it's a new season that we're working towards, and the reality is that that new season will look different, and it may potentially be a whole lot longer because there's going to be a lot of catch-up played by sports, by broadcasters to get games and get sports back up and running and moving. So the only break within the next 12 to 24 months of any significant length may be now. So we need to take that opportunity to step away from the sport and engage with the rest of our lives as coaches and as athletes, and make sure that we're planning ahead so that we know this is what we're going to put forward in the next phase, and this is the step that we'll go to in the next phase, even if we don't know how long those phases are going to go. And that's just periodization, is having a plan. Having a plan and having a structure and getting the right things in the right order and implementing those at the right time. It doesn't have to be set by exact weeks and exact end dates at the moment because we don't know what they are. The reality is there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and we will get there. It's going to be a rough ride. It's going to be a rougher ride for some on the way to the end of that. But when it comes to our team sport athletes and how they're training under the current challenges that are presented to us, there are the steps that we can put in place along the way to give some structure. There are the skill set measures that we can improve on once we identify what those are and how we'll go about it. But it's all driven by our mindset. It all comes back to, have we taken the time to accept our current situation? Have we connected with that? Have we looked forward and decided how we want to grow and what we're going to be driven by and what actually drives us? What is our why? What drives us to get there? It's the absolute underpinning key towards if an athlete needs to get stronger in this period, if an athlete needs to get more fit in this period, if an athlete needs to find a way to improve their nutrition in this period, if they are nailing everything as a professional athlete but they need to focus on their outside life. There are so many different elements for us to consider, but when it comes to the training prescription, it's critically important that we do the basics well and that we put the process in place to get to the light at the end of the tunnel and to hit the ground running. So look, I'm really looking forward to having a further discussion on the topic and bouncing a bit of Q&A. Really love to engage with other coaches and those sitting in on this series around different ways that we can all work together and share information to ensure that not only our athletes come out of this better on the other side, but that we have a great support network that allows us to do the same.